Is my microphone hooked up? Oh shit, my phone. Is my microphone hooked up? Cool. It is. What up, bitches? Welcome to this first installment of this new thing that I'm trying out. Today we will be talking about my favorite Christmas movie. No, not that one. I'm talking about my favorite Christmas movie that has dogs in it. The 12 Dogs of Christmas. Yes, I did know that this movie was terrible as a child, but I wanted to be exactly like the dog lady.
The dog lady?
The dog lady.
As a kid, so I was willing to let go of literally every single plot hole because of it. So the Google reviews of this movie are literally all over the place. They range from Jones Mike, whose name sounds backwards, I feel like it should be Mike Jones, who gives this movie 5 stars and says, "Great movie for the young and young at heart. No profanity and no overt violence make it okay for the little ones." To Lehrman Smith, he gives it a 1-star review, which says, "The worst and easily the most bizarre movie that I have ever seen," and everything in between. And I can say that literally all of these reviews are correct. So with that, we're just gonna dive right in. We start out with a girl who is poor. And you know how we know she's poor? Because she's dressed like Tiny Tim. And she's got, oh shit. My mom came home. Okay, so where was I? You know she's poor because she's dressed like Tiny Tim and she's working and got a paper route instead of being a kid. Stop! Why do you guys hate me? Get. And everything's shot in this like dank, dark, gray tone, and it's just, they're poor. They're clearly poor. Anyway, her dad's getting evicted, and so she has to be sent to live with her Aunt Dolores, the hairstylist. So when she arrives at the train station, we are introduced to who I aspired to be as a child, and still sort of do to this day. All these dogs are sent to the dog lady, which we can only assume is her. But the dog catcher's assistant is also on the hunt for those dogs. When Emma tries to help the dog lady's son get one of the dogs onto the truck, she accidentally lets him out of the cage and brings up one of the most prevalent plot points on this movie, which are
Girls are worthless!
but it's all good. They get the poodle back before the dog catcher guy.
Right, get in!
What are you doing, lady? Give me that dog!
But why? Why are all of these dogs being sent to the dog lady? Well, it's because the mayor of the town hates dogs and has banned all dogs from Doverville. Duh.
The dogs will go. That's what I promised. That's what I'll do.
But the dog lady lives just outside city limits, so she can have them all. Anyway, Emma walks to her Aunt Dolores' house, who apparently doesn't know she's coming.
You're Douglas O'Connor's girl? That rat!
And I feel like these kind of details should really be worked out before just blindly sending your child to live at someone else's house, especially if you haven't seen that person in years. But luckily, Dolores' good nature allows this new homeless child to stay with her during the holidays as long as she gets a job and earns her keep.
I expect you to get a job and pay your own way.
You know, like the true holiday spirit, forcing children to do physical labor in exchange for room and board, which, by the way, is like child physical labor is apparently another theme in this Christmas movie. The next day on our way to school, Stop! Sorry. The next day on our way to school, Emma finds what is supposedly a mother dog and the dog's puppy, which are coincidentally 2 completely different breeds. Although the dog catcher nets the mother dog like he's some sort of a cartoon villain. Emma grabs the puppy and escapes, and with the help of a strange man and his dog sled team. Thank God the man drops her off at school and doesn't just take her back to his house and murder her or something. So Emma stashes the puppy in a box and goes to school where they're practicing the Christmas pageant. I wonder what song they're gonna sing for the Christmas pageant. Such a mystery. But the original director goes into labor very, very quickly. So they have to find a replacement, which ends up being the gym teacher. So you remember the dog lady's son? Well, he's coincidentally in her class. And he's all like, yo, you're clearly a dumb girl who can't take care of dogs. Come back to my place and we'll show you how. And Emma does, which is like literally so insane to me. It's been less than like 24 hours and this girl's wandered off with so many people. But the dog lady offers to take Emma's puppy for her. But when she goes to take Emma back to her Aunt Dolores, the puppy like bursts through the doors and is like, psych, I'm coming to you. So she goes back to her Aunt Dolores' house and hides the puppy upstairs. All while Aunt Dolores, what the hell is happening? Get out of the Christmas tree! All while her Aunt Dolores like shares more of her Christmas cheer.
You better be getting a job and paying your fair share, or you'll be going hungry and living in the woods.
The next day, after a few failed attempts of finding a job, Emma goes back to her Aunt Dolores, who tells her, oh, she can get a job with her special friend, who just so happens to be the dog catcher. And Emma's like, no. And then she goes back to her room to write a letter to her dad. While she does this, the puppy runs downstairs and destroys the salon. Aunt Dolores, of course, is upset. Rightfully so.
Tomorrow, I'm going to find you another place to live.
Maybe. So Emma feels bad about this, and she stays up all night cleaning up the mess, which sort of changes Dolores' heart, especially when her special friend, the dog catcher, comes over for some morning lovin'.
Mistletoe, see, mistletoe.
Oh.
Emma successfully sneaks out and escapes to run back to the dog lady, who agrees to watch over both the puppy and Emma as well this time. But just as this is decided, the mayor shows up again. And we're all like, oh yeah, I forgot you existed. Since the mayor just has it in for this poor woman, he decides to like move the city limits so that her house is inside city limits now.
You are no longer in the country, Mrs. Stevens. Our town is growing, you might say, and, well, you are now inside the city limits.
Which I'm not sure is something you can just do, but I could be wrong. I've never been mayor. So being the badass dog lady that she is, she marches right up, she takes the city lines and just tosses it out. But now they're technically within city limits. The rest of the town is like super reluctant to help her with her dogs and give them scraps and stuff.
But you've always given me your trims.
Can I help you? Why do you always do this? Get. Shoo. Get. Also, the dog catcher does something super illegal and damages the dog lady's property in order to let the dogs out. So when the kids go to school the next day, the dogs follow them and somehow get into the building, which I think should be considered a fundamental structural flaw of that building, that dogs can just go wherever they want. Maybe that's why the dogs are banned. Doverville is just super poorly designed from an architectural standpoint, or amazingly designed from a dog's point of view. Either that or somebody really messed up and left all of the doors like wide open. Anyway, the kids try to get the dogs outside, but the dog catcher is like too quick for them this time and actually ends up grabbing them and taking them to the pound. So Emma asks her Aunt Dolores to get her a job with the dog catcher so she can like sneak in and rescue the dogs.
Still get me that job with the dog catcher.
Well, okay.
And all while this is going down, the gym teacher visits the dog lady and offers up the kids like in his pageant for manual labor and help with the dogs in exchange for her helping with the pageant and playing piano accompaniment. And again, this seems really sketchy to me. You shouldn't be able to offer up somebody else's children for manual labor at what is essentially a stranger's house. And once the dirty deal is set between the promise of more child labor at the Christmas pageant, the rehearsals start coming together for a minute, until Emma shows up late because of her job with the dog catcher, and the dog lady's son straight up decks another kid. Oh, my son just battered another child. So that ends the rehearsal, and they go back to the dog lady's house so the kids can start their manual labor. But the dog catcher shows up and steals them away because she needs to like work for him more or something. During which time she steals the keys and lets all the dogs out except for the dog lady's son because she couldn't find him. And of course, as a natural punishment, the dog catcher locks her in a cage. So what is wrong with all of the adults in this town? So eventually Aunt Dolores finds out and like makes the dog catcher let her out. which I feel like should not have been something that she had to make him do. Like, how long was he going to keep her in there if Aunt Dolores didn't come to get her out? Anyway, Emma comes back and doesn't have the dog lady's son's dog, and he gets upset and runs off. So she straight up steals the keys to their car and drives back to the dog catcher. Jones, because driving is super easy. I guess you can just do it naturally. When she gets there, she stows away on their truck to see where they're taking all the dogs, which apparently is straight up a dog fighting ring. And although I've never been to... Get out of here. Shoot! Damn it, Jones, you're all wet. And although I've never been to a dog fighting ring, I'm sure this is probably pretty accurate to what it would look like. So Emma starts deciding to be a badass and just jumps into the dog fighting ring to take the dog back and just runs off. No idea where she is or how she got there or how far away the dog fighting ring is. But apparently she's able to make it back by morning. When Emma tells the gym teacher and the dog lady about what she saw, they decide that there's only one thing to do. Give the mayor a dog and change the Christmas pageant to include dogs. Even Aunt Dolores gets in on the fun and uses her hair salon to help the dogs get bathed and ready for the pageant. But right before the pageant starts, they find out that the dog lady's son's dog has given birth to the perfect number of puppies for the number that they were missing in the show. Which begs the question, what were they going to do if this didn't happen? Were they just going to go out there and just be like, we don't have enough dogs for this number. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. And also, wait a sec. Does the dog lady not get her dogs, like, spayed and neutered? Don't get me wrong. I'm all on the, like, no spay and neuter train, as long as you're, like, insanely attentive and responsible for your intact dogs. But I don't think the dog lady's being insanely attentive and responsible with her intact dogs, because she barely has enough money for food for them, and she survives off donations, let alone basic veterinary care and monthly preventatives for internal and external parasites. Are these dogs just free breeding, like, just all over her property? Because that's going to be creating a lot more problems for her. But that's a problem for another day. Right now, the pageant is beginning. And those are not Cocker Spaniels. I mean, like, maybe one is, but the other two are clearly not. As the show goes on, the audience is loving it, and the kids are killing it, which I think I should mention that there are a few more kids than in the original class. Where did the rest of these kids come from? But everyone is able to keep relative control of their dogs, and not one of those dogs is on a retractable or flexi lead. And meanwhile, the dog catcher is behind the stage, letting all the dogs for the finale out. So when the 12th day comes... we have one of those theater moments where they're just like, again! And so Emma steals the dog catcher's cat and just runs out with the cat as a hilarious ending to the song. So when the curtain closes, the kids straight up just let go of their dogs and let the dogs maul the dog catcher. And they open the curtains back up so that everyone can see his dirty dog fighting money, which is just a money clip with a $1 bill wrapped around it, so it really could have come from anywhere. But he's fired, so it all ends well. And Emma's dad shows up for the Christmas pageant. It's a Christmas God, Pippin! It's a Christmas miracle. The mayor even names the dog lady's house as
A dog orphanage.
and Emma ends up naming the puppy Miracle, which is a terrible name for a dog. Like, how are you supposed to call it? Like, come here, Miracle! Or, like, yell at it, Miracle! Or, like, give it nicknames. I don't know how to give the dog Miracle nicknames. Do you have any idea, Pippin? I don't.